Are we live? I think we're here. We are. We did it. I'm only 9 minutes late. Woo! I had a very important wrestling game to play with my son on the PlayStation. My dad spent months trying to get a PlayStation so that my kids would be able to play. We'd all be able to play, me and my dad and my son and the other ones when they're a bit older. My son really didn't want to go to school today. And I had to make deals and had these scheduling things come up. So anyways, running around back and forth from the house to get here on time, trying to get here on time. Thank you guys for joining. I love all your beautiful faces. I appreciate you. Today we're talking about spiritual sovereignty, boundaries, judgment and discernment, the difference between them, and how actually sovereignty and how we see our sovereignty can be used to measure our own development and kind of where we're at. So it's kind of fun. So of course, as I go through this, we're going to notice like, oh, I kind of do this activity and he's sort of saying that that's like this step down here or up here or whatever. We're all going to have probably moments of understanding the various aspects of sovereignty throughout our life and throughout our day as we move forward. Like we're going to walk through our day. We're going to run into situations. We're going to feel trespassed against. This is where we don't feel our sovereignty's in play, right? Now that aspect, that couldn't be true. And so that's okay. We're all in this kind of understanding, learning what sovereignty actually means and how to actually properly apply spiritual sovereignty. So as usual, I'm going to chit chat and ramble on for a while. and then when I'm done, we'll do Q&A and, hopefully it's helpful. I think that this topic is actually one of the key or crux topics that we have in regards to our actual development, measuring where we're at, noticing where do I not stand in sovereignty. Sovereignty will also look like peace. It can look like a very aggressive, not aggressive, but like a strong no, stand up against something, but it's going to be peaceful, right? Because when one's sovereignty isn't questioned in themselves, they see no need to fight anything. So, what is sovereignty? We'll just define it. Let's define it first. So sovereignty is defined as supreme power or authority, right? So when it comes to our spiritual sovereignty, we're talking about our supreme power and authority as the God self. Our ego hears that, right? And goes, yeah, I am God. Woo! Party, right? Gets super, super pumped up about it. So the ego then builds spiritual sovereignty, its concept of spiritual sovereignty, which is what we essentially see as our spiritual ego developing, our spiritual persona. It's, I use the word spiritual ego when it's like spiritual, but it's also like a little confused and egoic, like separation-based, better than, worse than, judgment-based, moving into spiritual persona where it's soul-aligned and based in the truth of God. So that's really the difference between, I guess, spiritual ego and spiritual persona. Only really because the society sees ego as a bad word, basically. But of course we have a spiritual ego. In order for me to speak to you here, I have to put on a spiritual frame. I have to put on a spiritual disguise, right? I have to be like, look, I am a teacher, or I am a speaker, or I am a whatever, right? Now, you'll notice that in the talks that I give, I don't really claim to be really anything. I say teacher because it's, I guess, right? I don't know what to call what it is that I do exactly. And it doesn't matter that much to me. And when we're in our sovereignty, we start to have that presence of like, it doesn't really matter what these people think. And when I'm saying these people, I don't mean you guys. I care what you guys think. I do. I care what people think. I care what people think about and their opinions on things. I care about them. But only so much, right? Like, that's part of the sovereignty that comes out is we become a little indifferent to opposing opinion. Not ignorant and like dismissing everything. We just become discerning, and we'll get more into that in as we get through. But the concept of sovereignty looks completely different. Like what we envision sovereignty to be looks entirely different based on essentially where we are in our initiatory experiences here on Earth as a soul, is the best way to say it. Where we've gone so far and where our consciousness can see things from. How much of the allness that we are we knowing of ourselves? The more allness we know of ourselves, right? The more we know of ourselves as all things, the more we know that there couldn't be anything but sovereignty. Sovereignty is the only possibility, in fact. So it's a raising up outside, transcending the illusion that one could have some type of right or something pushed against, right? So I'm going to go through this because it's a little bit mucky, a little bit of a frustrating topic, I would say too, for the ego. But I'm going to try and be gentle because we don't need to be hurting about things. We don't need to lambaste ourselves because we have an ego, right? That's what we all do, right? We all do these things to varying degrees. Super important to just be cool with that. I talk about that a lot, but to balance that, to not. Also, something I had this little pop in my head. Your conscience, before you do, often we have this little subtle. This is kind of off topic, but we have this subtle little awareness in our conscience, and what it's doing is it's saying, "Hey, if you do this thing, karmically, it's going to come back." Just so you know, that's more what the conscience is doing. Conscience. The little voice is letting us know that we are doing something that, whether we can explain it or not, we know we probably don't really want to do it because we know what's going to come after. The inner intelligence that we are understands it. And so we go on these various swings of conscience. And it's important, actually relevant to the sovereignty topic, because conscience, sometimes when the ego takes over the sovereignty, it starts to think of conscience as like, well, I'm my own being and their experience is their business. End of story. So it doesn't matter what I do. So I don't have to worry about conscience because I'm a sovereign being. I'm the God self, right? And we can already, I hope we can feel that couldn't be the way. To just do whatever I feel like doing, regardless of any impact to anyone else, doesn't seem like that would make much sense, right? But that's sort of what the ego does. And so I'm going to go through the layers and how it's perceived, because it's going to look different to everyone based on where we're at. So first, it starts with one who believes they're small, limited, varying degrees, they're incapable or lacking. They're likely to perceive at this stage that they don't have sovereignty. Like the concept of sovereignty may not even really be a thing for them. In other words, they're just generally going to do kind of what they're told by a perceived authority. All someone really has to do is seem like they have authority, and this person will probably listen. All someone has to do is be convicted in saying something to them, and they'll probably go, "Oh, wow, that must be true. That must be exactly what I have to do," and all these things. The concept itself of sovereignty isn't really there. It's more just, I'm making my decisions to work within this thing, and I'm kind of essentially just autonomously following the rules and demands of all the external pressures, right? Probably feeling very much overwhelmed in different ways, not probably feeling super, like inspirited with what they're doing, probably. That's probably where they're at. And this is why we can tie it back to the spiritual development of our I am presence. And then also it shows up in our day-to-day relationships and interactions with everyone we see. Our sovereignty. We display and show our sovereignty with every type of response we ever make to anything that happens in our world. It's a bigger thing than just like boundaries with how people are going to treat me, or like not letting people change my beliefs or something just because they say something, not just believing them, that type of thing. It's bigger than all that. Sovereignty is the nature of who we are. And so the more of the nature of who we are we remember, the more God self we remember, the more God we know, the more we can show up as that divine persona or be the face of God in this place, in this world, which is ultimately the goal. Be the light as much as you can. And if you can't be the light and like the sacredness of source and the peace of God, at least just be kind, right? At least we can just choose sovereignly. Is sovereignly a word? But we can choose to just be kind, at least. Recognize, yeah, I might be upset, but I can just respond in kindness, right? This chair is super squeaky. You're welcome for that. I'm an audio nerd, so that type of stuff would probably bug me. So I'm sorry if that's bugging you. So the next one is one who believes the body and identity is the God self. So the body, let's say I believe Sean myself is the God self. I'm going to perceive threats on threats on threats on threats. I'm going to judge basically everything around me in different ways, because I actually believe it's not only my right, but my responsibility to put the world, my reality, as my God self sees it to be, which is just my individuality, my individual identity perceives that this should be this way and that way. And if it's not that way, then it's not in alignment with God, because I am God. Sean is God, right? And that view is not gonna lead to pleasurable encounters with life. It's going to lead to the backwards reality, just constantly showing the lack of perfection in your creations, basically. So this is where most people are when they start the spiritual path. This is where spiritual ego really starts to take hold. You'll notice in people, and probably in yourself, that you get more and more sensitive to stimuli. Your heart's more open. Your awareness is more vast, big. You're feeling more, seeing more, experiencing more. You're awake, or awakening at least, if you're listening to this. It couldn't possibly, unless you're listening to this going, this guy's so stupid, man, he's an idiot. But even then you're still on that trajectory. You're still waking up in some form or fashion. And so at that stage, the body and identity and ego starts to go, ooh, power, right? And tries to then go, oh, I'm the creator of my reality. Just like Abraham Hicks told me, or something, kind of misunderstanding a bit of the way Esther Hicks or Abraham deliver their messages, a little bit confusing a bit of how the manifestation works, which ends up causing manifestation to come, because the ego can manifest as well, by the way. When manifestation comes from the ego, it has holes in it. It's built on shoddy, ground, sandy. Jesus would say it's built on sand, and it's just going to crumble away. So then the next step is someone where they believe that they're the spirit. They're here to learn. I'm going to perceive challenges and lessons, but I know that I've designed them myself, and I'm growing from them. You can see here that there's nothing about power. There's nothing about trying to control anything. I'm a spirit investing a frame, and I'm here to learn. And ultimately, I'm here to forgive. Ultimately, that's what I'm here to do, to forgive so that I can experience love. Essentially, the amount of forgiveness we're able to keep cultivating opens us up more and more for more divine love. The more unconditionally loving we are, the more unconditional love God will share with us, in other words. That's like our reward system almost for being unconditionally loving and giving. We just start to find these bounties, these gifts, these miracles show up, or holy instants from A Course in Miracles. These instants of healing and expansion, and like, oh my gosh, like all I did was forgive this person and I feel like $1 million now. I forgave one person and I feel like I'm high. I feel like I'm buzzing. And I don't know if any of you guys have had that experience, but I've had that experience multiple times now. So I like it becomes very clear why Christ taught that. And we'll get back into that judgment and stuff after. It becomes very, very obvious, though, that when we judge, we're not being unconditional with our love. We're withholding love because we feel that that thing doesn't deserve love, or we don't deserve love. It's this, but it's the same thing, right? There's one of us here, so if they don't deserve love, we don't either. So when we point at them and we say, that guy is a dick, he doesn't deserve love. The Divine Mother goes, oh, I hear you don't deserve love, sweetie. Okay, so it is. Right? That's basically what happens. The universe just mirrors this lack of love. But I'll talk more about that. The next step, believe it or not, there's a next step, and then after that, it's a different conversation. One who believes they're beyond the lessening of third, fourth, or fifth density, they're not going to comprehend the concept of sovereignty. In fact, not properly. They'll remember confusion around it. But they're not going to comprehend that. So I wrote this down. I thought it was funny. I was talking to Ka, and I asked him if he could give, because I can't see properly from that density of consciousness. I can go into that density a little bit and get a taste almost of like what it's sort of like. So I just asked Ka if he could give us like a sentence. So he said, it is as if stating, I am a fish in the ocean and I am wet, to say, I am sovereign in the sixth density. The fish is obviously wet. The entity is obviously sovereign and one. Very simple. The entity, at the very end, he just summarized it perfectly. The entity is obviously sovereign and one. Therefore, the conversation itself is sort of, Ka didn't say this part, he just said those couple sentences. But the important part of it is that obviously the entire conversation is kind of moot, because of course you're a sovereign being. Of course everyone is a sovereign being. That's just their inherent right as a existing being. Existing them itself ensures that they are sovereign. And so maybe just to give some examples of statements that a very density light being might say. So a fourth density being in spiritual sovereignty might say, I'm learning what love and God are. That's sort of like what they're doing, right? Then there's an in-between where people find themselves between that, I'm learning, and what love and God are. And then there's people that have glimpses of the next chapter, which is the fifth density spiritual sovereignty, where it's something like what Jesus starts to speak like. In me you see the Father. The Father and I are one, right? That is the fifth density understanding. In sixth density, the understandings can't really be communicated in words properly, because the concepts of this type of topic don't really make sense once we get past that vibration in fifth. In fifth density, there's no more real worrying about sovereignty either, but it is seen as a thing, especially when observing fourth density or young fifth density beings, probably. So the sixth density perspectives like don't make any sense in the rational mind, then there's no such thing as it, right? The sovereignty is implied just by existing. The sixth density entity is going to speak mostly at a Jesus, Buddha type way. They're going to speak as God. A fifth density entity would also speak that way, generally speaking, but still sort of more easily able to observe the concepts of duality, because it's a bit closer to duality, but still far away, but closer, a little easier to grasp this idea that someone might do something against me, right? So this becomes really interesting, because I'm sure that we've all had these experiences, right? Probably, if we've been working on our healing and like trying to let go of things, we've had this experience where like someone said something to us, or we got into this little tiff with someone and they were trying to make us do something. And we had this moment where we're just like, wait a second, I don't have to listen to this at all. Like, I clearly just have I have no need to listen to someone demanding things of me. I just don't. I can choose, like, if the government's demanding I pay my taxes and I decline to do it, and then they put me in jail, right? There are some consequences that are just logically or practically there. But even in those situations, the universe works in mysterious, miraculous ways, right? And, if we're owning our stuff and we're showing up in peace and love, we tend to like avoid a lot of these consequences because we're not doing anything wrong, so to speak. And what sometimes consequences that show up actually turn out to be very big benefits for us. But we all have that realization, right? That we don't have to listen to other people. Like, we have that at some point. Or we just feel like, I don't think these people know what they're wanting and what they're doing. Maybe they're trying to manipulate me without realizing it. Lots of that stuff's unconscious, and we, especially if we're quite aware, we see right through it, and we're like, you're trying to manipulate me, and this feels really weird. As our sovereignty settles in, whatever they're trying to do actually doesn't even really become that relevant anymore, because whatever they're trying to do, you're going to do as you do regardless, right? Like, unless we're talking about a situation where they really need something and they're asking for help, and they're asking for a particular type of help. But asking for help of a sovereign entity is very simple, right? The sovereign entity then decides if they want to help. Demanding help is a different situation. A lot of times people demand that we do things that just don't feel right for us. I'll just give a small example because it's kind of funny, and I don't think my ex would mind me talking about this. But my ex-wife and my mom, and this is typical of that type of relationship, right? Have this kind of they get into these little like, my mom wants to do this and my wife wanted to do this, and they want me to like navigate it for them, be the bridge for that. Like, to make sure that, because they don't want to argue with each other, they want to keep the peace, but they don't really agree fundamentally on things. Right? This is old. This used to happen. It doesn't happen anymore. Partly because I stopped participating. I just said, I'm not going to tell my mom anything. And my mom's like, tell Ashley. And I'm like, I'm not going to tell her anything. Right? So, I just refused to get involved in it anymore, because I could just see, even back then, that there was this like weird thing I'm getting drawn into that has nothing really to do with me. And I don't like, can't you guys just talk and figure it out? Like, I don't understand the problem at all. Right? Even years ago, I couldn't grasp really what the problem was, other than I understood they both wanted different things, but both strong women, I guess. Right? So it's totally okay. But stepping into sovereignty, we're like, well, these people are doing this thing, and they seem to want me to get all involved in this thing they're doing, but I don't have to. So part of sovereignty is like realizing in each moment that I get involved in any type of story, narrative, that's what our experiences really are. They're stories, and they feel very real, and they can be very lovely, very painful, all the things. But they are still sort of, at the end of it all, sort of theatrics of consciousness, really. And we want to participate in these things in a good way, right? In a peaceful way, generally. But we're not really swayed by any of the... If people want to create a story and then invite you into it, we're looking to try to cultivate a presence of mind to go, I know what's going to happen here. You guys are going to disagree. Then I'm going to have to do this thing, try to smooth it all out and do all this stuff. And, we're a family now. So get it together, right? And if we have space at the time, I didn't know how to do this, but if we can help bridge it in a good, permanent way, right, then that's probably the way to go. But then again, we're not all therapists, right? So that's what I mean is we have to choose what kind of things we feel that are good for us to be involved in. It's super simple like that. And our sovereignty also teaches us that we're not obligated to give our attention and awareness to people that aren't respecting us and are trying to hurt us and stuff like that. However, if we're able to give them that in a peaceful way, we can actually really shift the tables. We can really turn the tables, so to speak. We can really show them an open heart, even in the face of perhaps some disgusting behavior, the way Jesus did. And now, certainly, I'm not saying we should all go sacrifice ourselves and become martyrs, right? Of course not. But that type of modeling of the crucifixion and how to approach the crucifixions we approach in life, the challenges that we get into with other people and conflicts and things, we're not trying to minimize crucifixion. We're just saying that there's all of these consistent repeating tests and challenges we get into. And when we face them with forgiveness, we're actually remembering our sovereignty, because truly we can't actually properly forgive unless we realize that we weren't harmed really in the first place, that our sovereign being, our spirit, wasn't actually hurt by these events. That allows us to open it up and to offer forgiveness, which allows us to, like I said before, feel more unconditional love. And that's kind of the ticket. That's the ticket home. Because the more unconditional love we feel, the more absolutely bananas everything looks, which makes it a little harder at first. Because we're like, wow, we have these periods. I'm sure you guys have felt this in different ways. Cracking open in the heart, like it's just breaking open, like crying fits over nothing, looking at the clouds and just be like, oh my God, it's beautiful, right? That stuff. Or just thinking of like a person from your childhood who did something super nice for you and just being like, wow, they were so kind. Things like that. Or for me, the biggest one was when I realized how much love people in my life gave me that I did not see at all in the past. How much love my parents, sisters, all the people I've ever known that I just couldn't even receive. I thought so little of myself, I couldn't even receive it. There's guilt there for that too that comes out, and then the heart just breaks open because you forgive yourself for not receiving the love, not realizing that, like, for example, the parent who is telling you, oh, this is for your best interest, I'm doing what's in your best interest. They're doing what they think is in your best interest, right? So like their intentions are good. That's love. They're trying. They're trying. No one taught them, right? This is important for us. We all have parental wounds, almost no matter what, inevitably. Actually, I would say inevitably. We have parental wounds because we separate from the parents. We literally are cut from the mother, pulled away, and we blame the creator, our parents. We do that. And the parents being the masculine father and the mother, divine feminine, we blame them for our experience. And it's mostly deep-seated, unconscious. We do that until we completely bloom. But we blame our parents for everything, and no one taught them properly how to parent. And if we look at their childhood, it's almost always it's worse objectively than like stuff that's before that. Wait, what am I saying? Sorry, somebody's spamming. Girls, I don't understand why people would spam. I get these weird Tinder spams and things. Hide user on this channel. Good. Get out of here. But yeah, so no one taught them how to deal with people, kids, emotions even, right? No one taught them anything. They just were flying by the seat of their pants and the conditioning that they saw from their parents, trying to discard the stuff that when they were kids, they're like, this isn't cool. This stuff that they're doing, my parents are doing, isn't cool. When they were kids, they learned that, and they probably tried to cut some of that out, or they adopted it full on. But they try to cut some of that out, and that's how the parenting gets better and better. But for us, it's like, and so, some of the realizations of that happen when you become a parent. So it becomes obvious, like, I have no friggin' clue what I'm doing. When you suddenly have a baby, I have no idea what I'm doing, and I'm so responsible for this. This feeling is really hard to describe. Those of you who have kids will probably know what I'm talking about. And this want for them to just have a great life. And so however we perceive their great life, that's what we're going to try and push on them, more or less, if we're not conscious of ourselves. So of course our parents who are acting from conditioning and unconsciousness, not from their sovereignty, not thinking of our sovereignty, not even probably knowing what sovereignty could mean. And if you had parents that went otherwise, that's amazing. Good for you. That's great. My parents appreciated my uniqueness and my sovereignty in many ways, but in other ways they didn't, which is normal, right? Also, I was, as a child, thinking of sovereignty as you don't tell me, I tell me. Even when I was like, I think around 13 or 14, I had this conversation. I said, look, I'm basically a man. And I wasn't kidding. This was not me trying to be silly. I wasn't just being childish. I was literally saying, you guys don't get to decide anymore where I go or what I do. End of story. And they're like, no, we don't agree. And I was like, well, I don't care if you agree. I respect you. I love you, but I'm not your like person to keep and do things. And I had this conversation and they didn't like it. I didn't think it went very well, but then I did what I said and I didn't listen to their rules. And this went really poorly. Lots of conflict, right? Lots of conflict. And they're like, well, then you can't go out. You're grounded. I'm like, okay. And then I would just go out, and it was very disrespectful, very anti-authority, I was very rebellious, very angry as well at the world that I'd been seeing and how people treat each other and all these different things. And I was sort of young, probably too young though. It became a major issue because at that age, I was invested in sovereignty in my body, right? So you could say that I was going through some of those lessons of fourth density sovereignty while I was like 13, 14. Some of us were born with what's called a dual array activated body. And if you're interested, you can look in the Law of One for information on that. It just means that we're born with the heart open and we can still sort of close it off and mess it up a bit, right? Blockade it. We can get in the way of things, but what we don't do is like turn it off. We just store it up. We just store it all up. And so then when we have our heart cracking open, it's It's the same experience, really. If we were born with a fourth ray active and had like a quite loving and expansive life, we're not going to really have that as much because we're more free flowing, right? Unfortunately, most people weren't there or weren't born in situations that facilitated that, because the world itself, like, you'd almost have to be born into like an isolated community that is just very embracing of almost like ancient style of living, almost like just communal, almost tribal style of living, for us to not develop too much pain and traumas in our heart. So the next thing was discernment and judgment. This is super important, because judgment is something the ego, or discernment, I should say, is something the ego uses to make judgment okay. So we want to be discerning, but not judgmental. Discerning just means I'm seeing what is true here. I'm seeing what is now, right? And judgment is saying, I see what is now, and I don't like it, I don't want it, get it away, or it's the best thing ever. We're going either way with that. Both of those things are judgment, in a way, to the ego, because when the ego gets elated about something, on the opposite spectrum of that, it's also saying the opposing polarity of that is bad, and it's judging, right? The dualistic mind's doing that automatically once we speak of something in that way. So just a reminder, if there's chat or any questions, like, throw them in, whatever you guys want. It doesn't have to do with this stuff. It doesn't matter to me. Whatever you guys want to talk about. I'll do my thing, and then from there we can just go back and forth a bit. Feel free. I always enjoy doing the Q&A stuff at the end. It's always interesting and kind of all over the place, which is exciting, and also fun for me as like a little test of like, where can I go with conversation about these topics, right? It's much more spontaneous, which is awesome. So, discernment. Discernment, the trick to discernment really is that we start off with a really shitty way. Like, we can't see the truth, really. We can't. Dr. David Hawkins writes about this a lot in Power versus Force. If you're interested, his work's amazing. It's high level. It's kind of painful sometimes to read through. Kind of painful, but it's great work. So I'd recommend checking that out. Where should we start? Judgment. Judgment is when we've taken our discernment and then given it a label. We've analyzed it and then given it a label. So if something is not for us, we don't also then have to add it's not for me because it's bad. There doesn't have to be the because part. The because part is not necessarily relevant. It's just that it doesn't vibrate. It doesn't vibe with me. We hear this all the time in society now. I don't vibe with this. I don't vibe with that. Like, people are starting to understand the world is vibration, it's energy, it's frequency. I don't vibe with this I don't vibe with whatever the hell's going on here. I don't vibe with it. That's discernment. It's whatever is happening. It's literally, I don't even know what's happening, but I don't like it really. It's not for me really. It's not something I want to participate in. But I'm open to participate in it if it seems like that's what I'm supposed to do. If it seems like I'm supposed to be here in this thing, then sure, maybe it's not uncomfortable. Maybe there's a lesson here. So we don't want to just go, ooh, I don't like it, and run away. Right? We're strong. We're empowered. We're like, oh, I don't like this. Why don't I like this? What is this? What's happening here? Right? Question it a little bit, just to probe into it, because a lot of times we can bridge. We can come together with things. If one of us is holding a really peaceful place and the other's like, we can often just bring it all down just with our presence, just with our peace. I did it this morning with my son. He didn't want to go to school. He got very upset. And I just brought him in. I'm like, come here, buddy. It's okay. Right? And he ended up going to school. It was quite a challenge, but he gets anxious, so I understand, and spent like an hour and a half just sitting with him to try to get him to go into school today. And honestly, in that time, honestly, I was like, God, give me patience here. God, please be with me here, because this child needs to get out of my face and go to school. Like, I get he's anxious. I feel compassion. But after an hour and a half of kind of back and forthing patiently, peacefully with the child, that you need to do something that they're kind of refusing, you're like, I don't care anymore, right? So I got to that place. I'm like, okay, I don't even know what to do. Like, I want him arrested at this point. I'm kidding, of course, but like we encounter these things all the time in our day-to-day lives, right? But trying to bring a peace to it, which is established through our sovereignty. Like, basically in that situation, like for most of the time, like an hour and a bit, I was like, this is fine. I get it. It's fine. It's cool. It's great to just hang out with him, even though he doesn't want to go to school. It's all good. But after a while, I'm like, I'm supposed to go do this. We need to get the car back. My mom has to do this. And, there's things going on, right, that are outside of what my son's doing. But in our sovereignty, we're like, so what? Right? I don't know. The universe is not wanting this child to move right now because he's not moving. Right? So what are we doing? We're going to fight him? We're going to pick him up over our shoulders and carry him in? Which I did have to pick him up out of the car a little bit. I tricked him and tickled him, so it wasn't weird. Because, I had to move him. But and this is actually, it's very interesting. This is directly confronting his sovereignty, right? His sovereignty is confronted here. He doesn't want to go, and I'm making him go, right? So that was a weird situation for me as someone who just loves his free will, for example. That's why this is so important. I love his free will. And I had my eye open. If there was some indication that like this was serious, he seriously couldn't go, then I don't care. Sure, fine. Go home. But most of it was just anxiety over he had missed a couple things in school, and he was just afraid, and he just needed someone to help him understand it was going to be fine. And kind of be a little bit pushy with him, not super, but a little bit pushy with him, a little bit aggressive, not aggressive, but like a little bit invested in like whether he goes or not. Also showing him that like, even though he's feeling like it's up to him to go or not, it's actually not really in the society. If he doesn't go, I get in trouble, right? I get in trouble for school, and this has happened with him before. So anyways, just talking about sovereignty, it's very important because we think of our children also as like things we can move around and do whatever we want with almost, right? Sometimes. The ego actually considers all relationships to be toys, basically. Almost soulless toys that are just here for our amusement. It makes claims about them as well, but generally speaking, it just wants the people around us to do everything we want, which is obviously unrealistic, right? So of course we're going to be upset and overwhelmed and all these other things about people encroaching on our space and draining us and being mean to us and all these different things, right? So in discernment, what we're really wanting to focus on is just like, what is the truth? And in most of our confrontations, the truth is that regardless of how we feel, right, this other being is like disturbed in some way, and they want to conflict with us. We're just discerning, okay, they're upset. So either we can establish a bridge, try to meet them where they're at a bit and understand them, maybe even offer an apology. In our sovereignty, we're not really apologetic for our being in our heart-aligned space in peace, like we're not doing anything wrong. But we can say sorry, but not feel apologetic. We're not lying. We're just playing the game a bit. We're just like, yeah, sure, I get it. You feel like I did something to you. I get it. I'm sorry you feel that way, right? Like things like that. Not in a condescending, like, I'm sorry you feel that way, like, idiot. Not like that. Just, I am sorry. Have compassion for how they feel. But at the end of the day, I mean, did you do something to hurt them or no? You know what you did, right? So whatever they're saying is not really relevant to anything. So we discern for ourselves our involvement in things. It's a spiritual responsibility and accountability. We don't let them tell us what's our fault. We choose. We choose what it's up to us to look at ourselves. And we don't get to trick ourselves either. The eye sees all of it. You can't hide from it. We don't get to do stuff and then pretend we didn't do that. The Spirit saw all of it, every moment of it. You have a spy. There's a spy in your midst. So no matter how private you think you are, right? God's watching. Spirit sees you. And, I've had these funny messages. Like one time I was in the shower and I had this vision of like Spirit watching me in the shower and like me feeling like sort of, that's kind of weird. But then realizing it's not, they're just always watching. They're just always there watching. So it's not weird. It's like the job of Spirit, God. That's what they do. It's us. Of course we're watching ourselves. In other words. So we don't get to like shy away from our responsibility, but we do need to discern for ourselves what we did in these altercations. And when we want to establish boundaries, we have to question ourselves a bit. Like, why are we doing that? What are we afraid of, first of all? And we want to be able to say, I'm not afraid of anything, just not into it. So I'm going to ask people not to give me this. That's my boundary. But if they keep giving it and everyone's doing it, your boundary is probably dumb. Right? The boundary is probably like an unrealistic boundary. Because especially when we're dealing with the consciousness in all the varied states where everyone's at, it's all different. And then we just expect people to just follow our rules we're making up. So we want to be very careful with what we do with boundaries, honestly, because we can set up these really weird mental paradigms for people to work within that are just utter tomfoolery. They don't even know, like, what are you going to do? Write out a whole manual for how they interact with you, right? Like, they're supposed to remember this on top of what everything else they're doing in their life, right? Make it a course in itself just to interact with us or something. People do that. They make lists and be like, you can't say these words to me, or you can't talk like, I don't know. If we're coming from love, none of that stuff's going to really be too much of a problem. But a lot of times we're coming from love and other people are coming from weird spots. So the most important thing with discernment is discerning when someone's coming from a weird place. You don't have to understand the place. You don't have to know, why it feels weird or what it's weird about or what they're trying to do. All you have to know is like, it's weird, I'm out. It's weird, I'm out. That's it. And then try to, do some investigation to figure out why it was so weird, if you want. But we discern that they're being weird, right? They're being confused. They're being upset. They're being strange. And, if we are in a space where we have energy and peace and we have fuel in our tank, or vitality, vril, chi, prana, this is the force that gets us to do everything. If we have that space, then we can try to bridge and help. But sometimes we just don't want to. And that's cool too. We're not obligated. We're not obligated to do anything for anyone. Truly, the advancement of the spiritual path is a solo thing. One of the paths is devotion to service to others. Now, the path in positive ascension is always service to others, but there are sort of three devotions that tend to be taken in different ways. One is a service-oriented thing where I'm doing all these things for other people. Then there's another where it's more sacrificial, ascetics type thing. I'm going to deny all my senses and push everything away, sacrifice all of the world, in fact, so that I can be one with God. And then the other way is to go the mind way, meditate, and try to find God in the silence and help God to come in to clean everything up in meditation. Mixing them all is the way sort of that I go. I mix it all together. I try to serve. I try to do all of it in some way or another. I don't know that way is the efficient way, but it seems to be the way that's working for me in this, I have to be in the world type thing. I don't have 12 hours to meditate a day. Although, if we need that, I'm sure it'll come up. The universe sort of preps everything for our particular path. You'll notice, even some of the things I'm talking about tonight are probably things you've been thinking about in some way, directly related to something that's been going on in your life, directly related to your children or to your parents or some other thing. It's because the information that we offer with each other in these streams is a harmony or a kosh of need, you could say. So everyone that ever tunes in has the same impetus or same thought of seeking. And the vibration of this stream just resonates with that. I'm not sure why I'm talking about that, but finally, I just want to talk about why judgment is so horrible. Why is it so horrible? Why can't we just say, that guy's a stupid idiot and I hate him? Why can't we do that? Well, we can, right? Free will. We can do whatever we want. However, Jesus said it best, the simplest and the best. Judge not, lest ye be judged. Simple. The consciousness is one entity. So to judge anything is judging us, right? To judge us is to judge them. It's to judge God, in fact. So once we are judging anything as right or wrong, we are ultimately saying this part of me is not balanced, right? So if this part of me is good and this part of me is bad, then we're not balanced. So for example, if I want to say that I'm a kind person, and it's good to be a kind person, that means it's bad to be an unkind person. And that means that if I'm ever unkind, I'm going to feel bad about myself. If I see unkind people, I'm going to project that onto them, and I'm going to say they're bad. And then I'm going to see kind people and say they're good, right? And very dualistic, right? Them and us and me and all the others. But when we realize that the kindness or unkindness is a manifestation of the consciousness that I inhabit, there's one of us here. So when they feel and act unkind, it's the unkindness in my consciousness also that I'm seeing. Otherwise, I would not be able to perceive it. And this is what happens as we ascend. when someone acts unkind, we're so much in our sovereignty, we don't even perceive that it's unkind. We don't even perceive it because the soul is bright, effulgent, true, love. The spark of the Creator is boom, 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 just radiating at you. So you can't, they're unkind. What could that matter? It's irrelevant. It's not even noticed. It's not vibrationally resonant with you. So when we see unkindness, we're like, that was unkind. That's okay. It's okay. We're discerning. What we're essentially saying is God wouldn't behave that way. That's really where we're getting to. That action that I just observed in them was not an action of God because it was very unkind. If it's not an action of God, it's an action of ego, which means it's an action of illusion and confusion and delusion, hallucination, which means forgive them, Father. They know not what they do. And when we judge anyone, immediately we're judged. That's why it bothers us that we're judging them. That's why it's annoying. It's agitating. It's like, getting fired up. Look how shitty they are. Right? Because it's unsettling us. Because we are judging us directly. There is no other. And that causes that unrest, that unruliness, that need to act, that need to correct them, that need to take my beliefs and say, hey, you don't believe this? Well, you're a stupid idiot and you're a sheep and you're asleep. You're probably an NPC. Say these types of things. It's ludicrous. It's not kind. It's not how God would speak to his children, you know? So yeah, I think that's, that was an hour. You guys are so patient with me. You beautiful, patient people. Thank you so much. I'm going to jump into the chat. Curly Vegans asks, do you believe that you're an indigo ray? Yes. So Sean is an indigo. The entity that I am is considered a white ray, which is a fairly unique ray. It's a ray that will begin to be a shepherd for blossoming Christ. I'm not there yet. But when I activate and finish the 7th initiation in the crown, I'll ascend essentially into the white. But right now, yeah, I'm basically indigo is basically the way to see that. The crown initiations aren't finished, so I haven't brought heaven into the frame. I haven't built the kingdom or the temple totally in a magical sense or a mystic sense. The temple is not finished. They've got to put paint up there. You know, we gotta get some different things going on. And there's various generations of indigo. Not incredible differences between them, though. There are indigo that are less experienced and indigo that are more experienced. I seem to fall on the more experienced side, though I don't worry too much about any of that. There are what's called an elder indigo as well, which essentially is like just a sort of ascended master of the indigo collective, you could say. And the indigo collective is a mixture of beings as well, a mixture of collectives, in fact. So the white ray, the best way to explain this is when you see the triangle with the light hitting it through the slit, and then the rainbow comes out. Think of that. Is it Pink Floyd, that album cover? So the white ray is prior to separation, right? So prior to separation, the ray is pure. And then when it hits the distortion of the body, or the triangle, there's a triangle here, like this, right? And then there's a space here in the heart, the gateway, and then there's an upside down triangle is another way to look at that. Almost like an elevator button, right? And so the white ray is where the crown kind of rests. Now it's violet, the crown's violet, but the harmonization of all the rays, the 144,000, or the full radiance of each center, causes a white, or it actually seems white and golden because it's the living light. So when that opens, the entity graduates into the white ray, or people might call it the golden ray. This is where back in old mystery schools and stuff, like the Great White Brotherhood and the all these different white things came from. It had nothing to do with skin, of course. It was all energy. So I'm an indigo, but an indigo and an indigo ray are like different. They're like, that's like a different thing. The indigo is the way that I see indigo, I should say. This is the way I see indigo. An indigo ray or an indigo being is a being who was essentially born with the open eye, right? It's the same with the rainbow children and crystal children, all those entities. They're just different, you could say, evolutions of the indigo. So I'm an indigo, and the crystals and the rainbow and whatever we call them, after the indigo, it doesn't really matter much what we call them. They are the white ray already. These kids are the white ray. So we see this as unique now because there's not a lot of adults that can properly articulate what they are seeing, experiencing, and those things, right? They're not able to articulate that yet, so we're not going to notice their spirituality as much necessarily. We see it. We see their spark. We see their soul and fire, but we don't necessarily see the wisdom of unity that they hold. It usually lays dormant until around 30 years old. The Saturn return has to lift time's anchor for them to realize the eternity of themselves. They're still subject to that veiling, as far as I understand. There are always exceptions to that and all of this, and this is just how I've seen it. And we're actually talking about something that is really only perceived in the astral or in our soul memory. We're not really talking about a concept that is evidence-based, right? Like, this is an experience to know that I'm an indigo or I'm a whatever, right? Some indigos are born with an open heart. Those would be probably the elders, come in with the open heart. These would be people that have ridiculous psychic abilities, maybe from early childhood, or just grow up in a very spiritual sense, or do something sort of like I did with just rebelling against everything constantly, that type of thing. So that's a good conversation. You know what? Maybe that's a whole video, honestly. The distinction between the rays. There's also angelic lineages to consider. And some of the angelic lineages tie into the rays, the 7 rays. But the white ray is the harmonic of the 7. The white ray is the evolution. So the angelics of the 7 rays would be here to facilitate their own opening of the white. Like the allness of creation is white. It's white or golden. It's everything. So an entity that's like perhaps a red ray or an orange ray, they're going to have various, or yellow ray, they're going to have different specialties, different things they're really invested in doing and hearing and feeling and expressing. Whereas a white ray is more like an open channel. I will express, for example, when I'm in my mastery state, I will be all the time essentially an open channel. So if somebody comes to me with a distortion and they're very blue ray oriented, very blue and in the throat communication, and maybe some indigo and heart coming in, I'll start to gel with that color with them so that there can be comprehension between the two. So in my particular role, I'm here to speak for now, but that could change. So for now, I'm here to transmit to them in their frequency what unity is, what allness is, infinity. I'm basically here to say, hey, you are everything. So these ideas you have about yourself and about the limitations, about how I'm someone who has to do this or has to do that, those aren't real. So for me, that's a challenging role. So for me to step, I have to step into my sovereignty and be able to speak to people this way and say these things to people, like dismissing their egoic beliefs, just flat out to them without really worrying too much about it, with compassion. That's what the white ray does, is it cleanses the other colors. Maybe the cleaner, not cleaner as in it's more pure, though it tends to be, but it's more allness, infinity. And so the other rays are amazing beings, and we're not all like, their specialties are important. But I'm here as a reminder to say your specialties are great, they're important, but you're not any better than anyone else, because, you know, so many of our starseed, wanderer, angelic, lightworker, spiritual people getting very popular talking about how they're just talking about things that are just very egoic, very like identity based. And so part of the reason white rays come is to balance that. So I'm not quite there yet. So for now, yeah, indigo. Indigo would be the way, Elder Indigo. And then I have guidance from the Emerald Order, or the what's called the Guardian Alliance. But I can go into that more in another video. It's kind of confusing even for me. It's still very new to me to even comprehend what's going on with that, to be honest. You can imagine, so 3 years ago, I just start hearing a voice. I wake up, have this Kundalini awakening, shaking all around. I don't know what the hell's going on. Next thing I know, I'm hearing a voice, but it's not like talking, it's just knowing. Oh, I'm Ka, but he wasn't giving the name yet. It's just a voice. You're going to teach this. I'm going to give you information. I'm going to lead you. We're going to go and do this. And I'm like, what the F are you talking about, man? Right? Like, what is this? What are you talking about? Some of you may not know, but 3 years ago, I was an IT dude, had no idea about anything about any of this. And it turned out differently than my life changed pretty quick. When we hear the call, right? We either respond or we don't, and I guess I chose to respond. I don't know. Thank you for the question. That's an interesting one, a challenging one to answer, and also there's lots of distortion in the world around like the rays and the ancestry and the lineages, especially with the Oraphim and the Elohim, and it goes on forever. It's very confusing. And what's authentic, what's not authentic. And, to be honest with you, I'm still trying to navigate that myself. So I don't worry so much about it right now. Because ultimately, too, at the end of the day, it's like, I am as I am. I am as God created me. I'm God's holy child, in whom they are well pleased. So we're good, right? So it's kind of it's very interesting though. I don't at all. I think the topic's super interesting. Curly Vegan asks, do you experience synchronicity? Oh my gosh, what a question. So I would say there are stages of synchronicity, stages of it. So first we see coincidence. We're like, oh, that's a weird coincidence that this happened and that happened and this number's there. But then we understand synchronicity. We hear about what it is, and we start to see numbers. We're like, oh, 1111. Oh, that must mean something. I keep seeing it, or I keep waking up at 3:33, 4:44, 5:55, whatever, right? Or isn't it weird that there seems to be just bunnies all around me? Bunnies are just everywhere. Oh, wow, I was thinking about Thor, and then next thing I know, my buddy sends me this meme with Thor in it. Weird. It's weird, right? This ramps up to a degree that can't be properly expressed. So synchronicity itself, the moment itself, is only synchronicity because you generated it with your mind, right? You made it. You made the moment. So it's nothing but the most perfect synchronicity that you've ever fathomed. The problem, it's not a problem. The trick to it is that we don't notice any of that miraculous, magical stuff happening. We don't notice it because most of our manifestation's unconscious. So because our manifestation's unconscious, we don't see all the synchronicity. As our awareness expands, synchronicity just grows and grows and grows and grows until it comes to a point where we can't possibly care about synchronicity. It becomes old hat. It becomes a sort of thing where we're like, neat. 11:11, 3:33. I see it constantly oh my gosh, I can't even, almost every single moment, there's something that's indicating to me my own previous thought. Like, in truth, that's all that's happening. But for my personal experience, almost every moment I'm being, whoa, synchronicity. Almost every moment. At least every few moments. Like thousands of times a day. It comes to a point where we call this in A Course in Miracles, they call it light tricks and stuff, or light shows, light theater. It's the universe is you, showing you stuff. So as you're seeing stuff, it's you doing it. I did that. That's where the responsibility comes in and sovereignty comes in, where we understand that what we see is we did that. That's us doing that. Even though it's totally apparently out here, it's everywhere else, but it's all one consciousness. Life itself, just moving. There is no separation, truly. It's a complete illusion. We tend to think of each other as like interconnected beings. We're all connected, guys. We're in this together. Yeah, we are connected. We're in this together. We're also literally one being. So we couldn't not be together. We couldn't not be. It doesn't matter what we think about it. That's just the truth of it. That's behind the veil. Mystics have been talking about it for forever. Masters, Jesus, Buddha, everyone. It's all over, everywhere. We're one being. There's one of us. The Sufi saying, I believe. I believe it's Sufi. You know, I can ramble forever. Good evening, Dina. Thank you. Hi, Laura Jean. That's my daughter. Oh, were you talking? I was probably talking about my son. Yeah. Yeah, kids are fun. This is an experiential planet. Laura Jean says this is an experiential planet meant to provide negative experiences to then free will choose to have a positive experience. Yeah, actually, like this planet, right where we're at right now, is like in the middle. So we go through this ascension process, and we go through the lower density states. Then we come to where we're at now, where we move into the higher density states. So we're like in the best time really we could be, the most interesting, cool time, the most impactful time. That's why we're all here in this awake kind of way, when the rest of the society is kind of like, right? That's why it's like that. Because we have to make sure, like, the planet will transition. It's just a question of which entities are going to ascend with the planets. And then also there's bifurcation happening where literally other versions of the planet are like coming into effect. It gets very wacky to talk about that. I'm not sure how to talk about that very well other than talking about timelines, but I need to investigate how I see timelines a little bit better to talk about that in a way that I feel authentic about. But it's an interesting conversation for sure. Lord Jean says, Indigo Elder here. Is that the white light ray you were talking about? It could be. It could be. I wouldn't know. Indigo. So when you say, so for me, Indigo Elder has a particular meaning. And so when you say Indigo Elder, I'm not sure what you mean by that. An Indigo Elder would be one who understands how to use the intelligent infinity gateway here, the Indigo Ray. This would be an expert in intelligent infinity, which is what I feel I am. It doesn't necessarily mean that we are pure or being good. We could be really bad people, in fact. We don't have to be nice. It just means we have the open eye. The heart can actually still be closed while the eye is open. If the heart's closed while the eye is open, then things get super weird. The weirdest stuff that you see in society done by secret societies and occultist things that are dark and weird, control, fear stuff, that stuff is done by, generally speaking, an expert in the indigo ray that hasn't opened the heart. So an elder indigo could mean that, but it also could mean a more magical experience. So an elder indigo, I would call that an adept. And an adept is working towards mastery. And in mastery is where the white comes in. And so for me to say something like, I feel like I'm a white ray being, and I'm not there yet, what I'm saying is that I feel there's an advancement coming for me as an indigo that will unify the chakra systems, the chakra network here, so that I can demonstrate allness eventually. And I'm not sure if that'll even happen in this life, right? So this life may end before I get there. But we're talking about essentially Jesus level. So I believe Jesus was essentially white ray, and Buddha and those people. And that's why when I make the claim, very careful to say, I am not there. I'm not there at all. But that's how I see these things. That's how I understand them from Ka. Anyway, I really don't know. I don't know. Oh, Curly Vegan says I'm a Blu-ray. That's awesome. Blu-rays are very important here. Very, very, very important. Very important. Blu-rays are often like the vocal ones. They're like, they're the ones who really inspire the change. A lot of them, yeah. Blu-rays are great. Laura Jean says, fire and water elemental symbology, the two triangles. Yeah, exactly. That's a good way to see that. Absolutely. We could also see, even the letters I am form this kind of pyramid, right? 1, 2, 3. Like the I is 1 point, the 2, right? And then 3. So it's, the crown and the eye are combined, really. Like they're sort of the same. Or you could see it as these two are the same. The throat and the eye are the same. It's, the Blu-ray also is the ray of Christ, really. Like this is where the Christ work comes from, primarily because we're in a density. We need to communicate Christedness or love, peace. We have to, whether we speak it or energetically send it or whatever the hell we're doing, doesn't really matter. The Blu-ray is the communicating ray. It's the transfer ray. It's the ray that like activates all that. So the Blu-ray is like the expert in doing that. And it's the same thing with the Blu-ray. Like they can have their heart closed off and be saying a whole bunch of nonsense, right? But all of us, when we open our hearts, we become very, very awesome beings. All of us. And we all have this like orientation, this like default orientation, especially karmically as well. Curly says, that's fascinating. I was researching the monad this morning. Awesome. Laura Jean says, how do you know your ray color? So I have an entity, and I don't know if I've seen you on the channel, Laura Jean. So I have an entity that I work with that's named Ka. Ka is, I think I mentioned it already on the stream. I can't even remember. Ka is a seventh density guardian. Ka tells me stuff sometimes, and I asked him what my ray color was, and he said, I am of the white, yet I am not fully activated. So I don't know exactly what it means. It's interesting, actually, that you guys were talking about the rays and all that today, because I was just asking Ka the other day, like a day or two ago. Ka essentially told me not to worry about it. Ka said, don't worry about it. Just kind of keep going with what you're doing. He doesn't speak like that. That's not at all what he said. He speaks almost like a robot, which sounds creepy, but the love vibrations that he offers are bananas town. His name is not Ka. He said that he gave the name Ka because there is no name to give him here. That he doesn't have a name like that humans would understand. And the reason he chose Ka is because of the first harmonic of the universe creation was Ka, and then it's Ka, Ra, Ya, Sa, Ta, Ha, La. Yeah. So those are the seven. What's the word? Sounds? It's not the word I want to say, but the seven sounds of creation are those. And you'll notice it spells Christ, Allah. So actually, Allah and Christ, like, it's the same, this all came from the same teachings that were then distorted and went throughout the earth in different ways. Portions of the same teachings. So you could imagine, like, there's a full teaching here, but it's been spread out over all of these different religions that had different sort of access to the various initial harmonics based on their frequency. If that makes any sense at all? So Ka also means the spark of life in Egyptian. It's also referred to in Pleiadian work as the divine Ka, which is like the diamond body, or the higher form of the Merkaba. Like beyond this, like, entity Sean, there's a next layer, and it's talking more about that layer of consciousness that's above us, that's way up there. He says he's one of 24 beings, and I had a walk-in experience where he just sort of melded with my consciousness in 2019, and from then I just started doing these things. So that's how I know things, most things. So take that for what it is, right? I'm talking to a disembodied being inside me or something, right? It's friggin' weird, isn't it? It's not that weird. It's actually quite normal. But it seems weird for humans anyway. It's weird for me. Weird for me. Laura says, yes, I agree about the egoic and all that about fixing stuff in the material when it must start within. Yeah. There's the material just reflects our status, like our consciousness just constantly goes out and reflects back, and then we perceive it and say stuff about it, feel stuff about it. So it's our feelings we're putting out. So anything in our world that needs fixing, the kingdom of heaven is within. Seek first the kingdom. Don't worry about the things. Seek the kingdom. Everything else falls into place automatically. It's magical. It's magic. I promise you from experience that you can be in the deepest, darkest hole you've ever felt, so lost, alone, destitute, worthless, whatever. And you can just accept, I am a divine child of God. My Creator's well pleased with me, and everything's great. The kingdom of heaven's here now with me. It is literally that simple. We get in our way. We fight that. We don't want to admit that. We don't want to let go of our pain. And then we have problems show up. But when we don't have that pain and lack and these beliefs, then those things don't show up. So, my guides use numbers to confirm stuff as well. Yeah, mine too. Sacred Scribes has the best angel number messages. Very authentic and helpful. Cool. I'll check that out. I haven't heard of it. Angel numbers for me, like I do the numerology a little bit. Like I have my own little thing. Like I didn't learn all these things that people know about the classic way so much. I certainly studied like some of the more popular teachings and things, but I'm like a noob. I'm a noob to all of this world, to be honest with you. Laura Jean says, oh no, my daughter acts like what you were talking about with an unrealistic boundary list. Yeah. I mean, it's hard, right? Especially, it's adorable, right? It's kind of adorable, like that someone thinks that other humans are going to like be able to really keep track of all that. Truly, like that's what they're going to do. And you might be like, well, if they love me, they will. Yeah, but like, do you do that? Are you doing that with them? Do you have a list of their boundaries? Are you accessing all this boundary stuff when you're talking with it? Like, how are you going to have a authentic, just flowing conversation if you're just trying to navigate a minefield, right? And I think it's okay when our kids are doing these things, or anyone we know are doing these things. It's just for us to go, I see what's happening. And then when they get upset that we encroach on their boundaries that we couldn't possibly remember because there's so many and it's ridiculous, then we just go, yeah, you have boundaries and I go where I want. So, I mean, right? I'm sorry that I stepped on your garden. It's like an old man or something. Get off my lawn! I have boundaries! Oh, well, I just wanted a carrot from your garden. Property is inherently theft anyway. That's probably an unpopular view. But I think it's true. Can't own the world. Can't own property. Doesn't make sense to me. But anyway, just an opinion. Curly Vegan says, I love thinking about and researching timelines. I would check out some vids from To Kitty and Beyond. Okay, I will. Actually, the reason I was thinking about timelines is, if you guys haven't seen this movie, it's called Everything and Everywhere All at Once, I think. Or Everyone and Everywhere All at Once. I don't know. But it's about this like Chinese woman and her husband and these things and all these like parallel timelines and stuff. The movie is silly, but it's also like amazing, and it's also profound. I cried throughout it multiple times because of the profundity of like what I was experiencing. We can get a lot from these things, movies. Hollywood, I've talked about it on the channel, but Hollywood, right? We created it as magicians to influence the populace to wake up. Right? Now, of course, that got corrupted and things went astray. But initially, the idea was Hollywood, which represents the holly tree, which we used to make wands of as druids and wizards. We would make wands of the holly tree, Hollywood, right? And so we created this place of magic to instill and uplift, but also teach, right? Like, we're trying to do both. And of course, it got all twisted up. And then narratives started getting pushed instead of opening eyes to archetypes, which is what we were trying to teach initially, was archetypes. If you look at the early Disney stuff, and we're trying to teach you, for example, what a savior does, what a hero does, what a princess is like, right? What a maiden is, what a king might look like. We're trying to teach archetypes to the whole society, because the awakening is literally the balancing of the discipline of all the archetypes, which inform your personality. So when you have the conspiracy theorists and all the people being like, pointing at the signs, look at the signs. Yeah, they got bored. They made signs. Yeah, they got bored. They just started to play with it. Also, there are negative forces that got into it as well. There was a divergence of minds that thought, one thought that we want to enlighten the people. The other thought, well, they're all dumb. Let's just control them. And so there's a mixture happening. And I'm not sure why I'm talking about Hollywood, but that's what happened. Laura Jean said, I'm going through the initiation right now. Yes, totally agree. I do communicate a lot. Like, I feel like I have to. Maybe I'm Blu-ray. I'm relating so much to this. Awesome, Laura Jean. That's great. Yeah, the initiations, we go through them in cycles. I'm actually going to do probably a course on initiations. Now that I'm talking about it, let me just ask you guys what you think. I want to offer the course totally free, right? Like, I want to do probably 7. There might be 2 parts to each. Each initiation might have 1 or 2 parts. So 7 to 14 sessions of teaching that go through the 7 initiations of the red up into the crown, the root Malkuth up into the crown chakra, or violet ray, and what these initiations look like, how we experience them, how we navigate them in our lives, and the best things we can do when we're in those initiations, like literally practical things. I want to give that all for free, but then I want to do maybe like a Q&A thing. So like have a premium, like maybe a Patreon community where I'll make that content, and then we'll do like a weekly Q&A for that content. And then I'll create more courses and we'll do more Q&A or something. Make it more interactive, like we join on like a group call, for example. But I don't know if people want to do that or not. Let me know what you guys think. I'm really interested. This seems exciting. Really, there are only the 7 initiations. We also refer to them in the body sense as the 4 ordeals. So there's the 4 chakras that we work through in the red, orange, yellow, and then green. And we work through those as the 4 ordeals. And then we move and ascend into the next part, which is the Trinity that we work with. And we start to look at how we're engaging with the oneness presence of God. So hopefully we can get through all of that. And I think it would be really cool. And I think that way at least everyone gets it free, like the real foundation of it. And then if they want, because I got kids to feed, guys. You know what? Actually, I want to say something funny. So sometimes I'm not sure how I'm going to have money. I'm not sure how I'm going to feed myself. And it turns out that my parents buy all of their things on this particular credit card. And so they're like, hey, why don't we buy you groceries with all the points that we've earned from these credit card bill payments and things? And I'm like, I mean, thank you. I mean, okay, sure, thank you. And I noticed they have so many points. Like, they can probably feed me just from their points. And that's more or less what's been happening. My parents have been feeding me from their credit card points. So they're not spending money on me. They're just feeding me from the free money that the credit card company is giving them. They could use it for themselves. So they are doing me a very big favor. They don't have to do that, right? And in fact, I'd be totally fine with no money. I know, in fact, that if I walk outside and wander around, someone will feed me. I'm not worried about it. But I do need to charge something for something. And I don't like charging money because I don't care, right? I truly don't care. But the world cares if I pay them. Like if I don't pay my rent, they don't like that. And if I tell them, hey, I'm an infinite being, bro, that's not going to fly. It's not going to do it. Right? So, of course, I need to make some money. So I think that's a way I might do it. And then continue to offer new courses, expansions, maybe next stages, because the initiations just get more advanced, more nuanced, more subtle, more confusing, in fact. And, although I actually teach that you don't need anyone to help you with anything. But there are people here that can help you with things. You just don't need it. You don't need my work. But you could use it, right? So it's sort of like that. That's my stance on it, is I really don't like when spiritual teachers are like, I have the thing. I will take you to the next level. That's not what this is. This is you do it, right? You are the one doing the thing. I'm just literally a face saying stuff at you to remind you how. And that's about it. At the same time, I am happy that I have that capacity. Cool. It sounds like you guys are interested. Awesome. So I'll set that up. I'll set up a Patreon and do all those things. I think that money and sovereignty as well is an interesting topic, right? Like we kind of feel like money is needed for everything, and it's interesting. In my experience, money is like not needed because people just give me things, and I don't know how to express my gratitude for it. There are so many of you that have donated as well, I should say, while I am on this topic. So many of you have donated, and just, I'm so grateful. I really appreciate you. You guys are awesome. And yeah, so I think that's probably time to go, and I'll start making the course. I'll start setting it all up, and you guys are all welcome to join. We're gonna have fun. And, we can get, in the Q&As, like there's stuff I can say as well in like our private conversations I can't say on YouTube as well, right? So it could get more interesting, right? I'm not censored on private or our group chats. Not that I censor myself really here either. I really don't care. I don't worry about it. The way I see it is, if I'm not being judgmental, there's nothing to judge, baby. Right? We're free. We're good. Thank you, Laura. She said, listen, I'd totally support you on your Patreon. Thank you. That's awesome. Even just one person is enough reason for me to set it up. So I appreciate you so much. Thank you. I will set it up. I will do the things. And yeah, like you said, Laura Jean says, yes, you should get paid for the content you create to fund your soul's mission. Absolutely. I agree. But I think that only just now I'm reaching a stage in my life where I feel it's appropriate to actually ask people to pay me. And what I really want to do is give it free. I'd rather just do it free. And I think what I'll do is do it for free as much as possible, always. That's my goal. Always free, if possible. And just live on donations and, food stamps and stuff. I don't care, right? We don't have food stamps here. I live in Canada. But whatever, right? I do what I have to do, because honestly, I'm not worried about that stuff too much. But truly, I do not want to spend probably my whole day working like 10 hours and 8 hours or whatever, and then not having the energy to do what I'd rather do. So it's probably important that I start to establish an income. Thank you, guys. Oh, Aaron L. No worries. You can catch the replay, and also, I'm sure I'll be on tomorrow. I'm really trying to do 12 p.m. noon lives every weekday. I'm having some challenges because my ex-wife works at the courts, and so if any of the kids are sick or anything, I have three children that are in school. Any of them are sick or anything like that, then I have to run off and do whatever, right? I don't know. And so lately, everyone's been sick for like 2 weeks. Someone was sick every day. So it's like I don't even know when I'm around to stream or do anything. So I stream when I can. I want to make it, around noon every day. So if you are interested in catching lives, they're going to try to be around that time, noon to 1 p.m. And I don't expect you to try, I know you got other more important things going on, but if you do want to catch the lives, that's where it's at. And you can ask questions, get involved, and we can get all sexy with each other. All right, I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. I'm going to start working on the course, get it started. I'm very excited now. I really appreciate all your support and all your positive suggestions. And honestly, you guys are all amazing. Very rarely do I ever get any kind of nonsense in the chat or any weird stuff going on. And I think you guys are all amazing. So thank you so much. The internet can be a bit of a sketchy place, but we've seemed to carve out a nice little circle for ourselves here. So thank you so much. I appreciate you. I love you all. Take care.